Hey, this is the Average Fellas podcast. I hope you got your coffee ready. Let's talk some business.
I had a vision of success and where I wanted to be.
And I had never owned my own business. I had never worked for myself.
And when I was ready, I told him, I'm sorry I had to leave your company, but I need to start my own dream,
Because it's a business. We're a business too.
Right.
Like, invest in yourself. Don't just.
I mean, they replaced the refrigerator with like one of those fancy coffee makers.
Hey, welcome to another episode of the Average Fellas podcast. I'm your host, Zodizach, coming to you live all the way from Riverside, California on another beautiful Monday morning, ladies and gentlemen. So this episode's getting posted late today. An opportunity came up that I couldn't pass. I was able to get on a call with a friend of mine who's in the industry as a analytics data scientist, and so I was able to toss some ideas around with him about web traffic and social media, and so we were able to sort of get deep into the the swamp, if you will, when it comes to this sort of topic. Some of the terms that we use, some of the vocabulary that we use may sound cheeseball, may sound kind of weird, may sound very marketing sleazeball, but that's only because we're exploring this industry of internet traffic, web marketing, social influence, these sorts of things are just sort of like on the same plate. Like I'm interested in it, he's interested in it, and I have another friend of mine who's really interested in it, and so hopefully I can get us together on a call where we can just chat and really dive deep into the woods about this sort of stuff. So I really hope you guys learned something from this conversation. I thought that it would provide a lot of value to you guys. Like, I was just wanting to spitball with him and really bounce ideas off of him, and him do the same thing with me, and then we're just sort of hearing it, being inspired in our conversation, take that back to whatever we're working on, and then trying to implement some sort of change, or try to use that to help focus our thought process and implementing those things, whatever it may be. So once again, these are tools that I wanted to just put out there on the internet, and they're helpful for me, so I hope they're helpful for you. So anyways, without any further ado, guys, this is my friend Mark. He's data scientist, and I really appreciate you guys tuning in and listening to the conversation. All right, laters. Okay, so real quick, so conversation today we're gonna talking about, I guess, web traffic really, and a theory or just a thought in my mind really about an internet city, and kind of, I guess, elaborate more on how web traffic works and comparing real estate, I guess, to internet traffic. So that's sort of like my thoughts on that. And today I have a guest on the show. What's up, my guy?
Hey, everybody.
I don't know if you want to introduce yourself, but you all know me, Zodizach, Average Fellas Podcast.
Yeah, my name is Mark, and I'm in data analytics. Recently getting into some stuff like social media trends and how we can leverage kind of what's going on currently in the world to boost our web traffic, right? If you want to find me, just ask Zodizach, because that would be your best option.
All right, awesome. So basically, I'm going to sort of lay out a thought about the internet city. So the way I imagined the internet working was there were some huge like hubs of traffic, pools of influence, people that are in one place, sort of like a big city. So like in reality, New York or LA has like 10 million people in LA County, and Colorado has like 5 million people for like the state or something. I don't know, some crazy number like that, right? So there's disproportionate amounts of traffic by the laws of nature, because there's just way more people in this pool. There's more density, traffic density. So when I started thinking about internet traffic and how do I start to get people to look at what I want them to look at, I have to go to the marketplace of where all these users are at. Okay. And I consider it a marketplace. Like, I have to go into the city to go do commerce. I have to go in there and I got to go get their attention there because they're all there. And I imagine billboards. So like, and this is we can get into funnels today. We can build this whole entire thing out. We can talk about how content works. That's my kind of like I just love to get into that kind of weird stuff. So going back to the density, right? So my first theory about web traffic and what I thought was there's nobody looking at my website, but everybody's on Instagram and everybody's on Facebook and everybody's on Twitter. And the easiest way for me to get into the game was to build influence on social media platforms. And hopefully I can translate content there to drive to web traffic, drive those users to my website or to my another web channel. It could be YouTube, whatever you want, your podcast. So that's, in theory, was what I was trying to do. So I was trying to take people from the big city where all the traffic's at, and I was trying to get them out to the suburb where my little website was and see if there was anything interesting there.
Yeah, that sounds about right. I remember we were going over this previously and talking about taking the right path to get to you and how the different social media or just internet outlets, internet avenues will bring you to your main hub, right? Like that would be averagefellowspodcast.com. That's where that's where your house is. It's where you live. You want people to get there. And something I've noticed recently is if social media platforms, I thought were kind of like their own corporate building, in the city. But the way I'm sort of thinking of it now is it's kind of more like the path or the trajectory that you need to go to get to your website. So one of the things I've been experimenting with has been just looking at what's currently trending, right? So I've got like a equivalent of like a Python script set up to call the Twitter API and every day populate this table that'll show me, this is what's going on in the world in each region. This is Portland, this will be Seattle, this is US overall. These things are being talked about. And I'm trying to see if you can take some of the top trending, literally just hashtags, and kind of overlay them with your own keywords and what you're about. So then you could post the right thing at the right time. And I just started doing this, but I'm thinking that you could use these avenues to actually, capitalize on the content being talked about and then the content you're trying to present to people.
100%, man. 100%. I totally, so I guess in practice, what I've experienced, kind of like what you're talking about here, is like I implement a similar strategy, but it's not as dialed in as what you're talking about, right? So I'm a small fish in the ocean right now, so I'm barely getting into trying to, or even me as an individual, to get clean data, to set up a controlled environment, to create those nodes of connection, like you said, with the hashtag, right? So if I have a hashtag, my keywords, which might be podcast, coffee, web solutions, right? And then I would cross those with other hashtags like content marketing, coffee, something that might bridge me a little bit further through the internet, if that makes any sense.
No, that does. And that's really interesting because that was the next step I took. I took the top trending and then I was like, okay, I have a list of, say, the top 50 trending like words right now on Twitter by location. What do I do with that? You can get related words, right? So words posted with like somebody's talking about Putin, somebody puts down China, and it's like both those hashtags. So you can actually iterate through and you can get like 1,000 words that have been posted with the top words. So it'd be like coffee and tea would be an example. But I'm sort of breaking into, if you created like a list of these are all the things we talk about. Like this is the stuff that I'm into. This is the stuff people come here for, like the meat and potatoes. You could basically cross-reference every variation and like word that you have of your top themes and compare them to like, thousands and thousands of words that are just up there, right? Up there in Twitter trending because they relate to, the top 50 currently.
Yeah.
That's new for me too. I know last time we talked, I didn't really dive into this. I'm really scrubby. So like, I don't know what I'm, I think I know what I'm doing, but that's why it would be really interesting to talk to somebody who has the terminology that I don't have.
Right. No, I totally get you. Because there's so I was talking to so once again talking about my boy Daniel here, who kind of sent me down the rabbit hole.
Yeah.
So he just sort of he gave me some little insights about building content funnels, and he would say words like he would say things like the ROI in something, right? And this is the things that I mean, it sounds super cheesy, but we see it on YouTube and we see all these like crazy little influencer dudes talking about it. And you're like, oh my God, but there is something about it, right? And so there's some of these language terminologies sound kind of sleazy, but somehow they fit into this chain of like traffic somehow. And I think that's kind of like so the hashtag is like a hashtag, and using social media platforms and like using certain functions to try to break through the noise, I guess maybe might be a phrase that you heard. So we're all trying to find these little patterns. We're all trying to find these little strategies, and it's sort of, I guess, created it really created a competitive space for people like us, or like you, someone who is, analytics guy, a place for you to actually engage in something competitively and finding that next solution, right? I feel that's what it's like. I feel like it's a gold rush. I don't know if that's how you are feeling this right now, but like understanding how these little pieces to the puzzle work to get your traffic or to get you to the next place in the platform is like a gold rush. I don't know. It feels like that to me.
No, it absolutely is. We talked about this a little bit before too, how it's a gold rush that started a while ago, right? And it's more like, the way I imagine it is, the more time you invested from the beginning, no matter what your content was, it's just over time, you will capitalize on it, right? So if you were doing the same thing you're doing with the same consistency, and this is just my opinion, for like, 2 to 5 years, you'll notice a huge difference, especially if the platforms are newer. That's how so many Twitch streamers are, kings and queens of the world now. They started at the right time. And podcast, and we talked about podcasts, is just a platform that is so new that the gold rush is there. And so I'm really curious if the finagling and the trend following of social media can boost viewership and interest for listeners, right, for podcasts. And I liked what you said about breaking through the noise, because I keep going back to that one analogy, and taking the right path to get to your content and the podcast, right?
Yeah.
And I'm just curious if, I'm trying to see if, for example, if you're posting about one particular topic, because you bring on you had a guest from like Alaska, right? And I'm thinking of like, if you had a post on Twitter, right, and then you have your post on Instagram, and then Facebook, like, check out the podcast. Are they the same post, or are they different? And have you noticed any difference, like if they're identical versus if they're just thematically similar? Like one's just about Alaska in general, and then, check out the podcast, or do you like seriously use the same exact text phrases so that you can see, I don't know, if the exact same phrasing on applies to the Google search that are going to bring people to you down your path?
100%, man. Like I run the gambit on it because I've experimented. So I've been trying to learn how to use content to drive traffic, trying to learn how to market my own show and my own web channels online, right? So it's been a series of, if at first you don't succeed, try again, and don't do the same thing over and over again if you're going to get the same results. So some things I do over and over again, but I look for the successes, right? So the one thing about Instagram and Facebook is that they have a small little back end analytics thing for you to look at and track your posts, right? So it does give you some information, not nearly as much as like somebody like you would want. You definitely could take that information and split it 100 different ways and learn even more stuff about it. So because you are an analytics scientist kind of guy, so if that's your cup of tea. I'm an average fellow, so I try to take what I have, and I look for the highlights in it, and for different platforms I would start to notice a trend on what was successful. So okay. And after a while I start to like look for I started to design content or only post content that fit in those designated trending sort of successful formats of content.
Yeah, and that's kind of what I'm trying to pick your brain about is, have you noticed, is it more important to focus on like identical content, like identical posts, right? Or theming? because I'm stuck between like, okay, I posted this thing on Twitter. Should I use the exact same thing down to the hashtags if I post about it on Instagram? Or is it more important to like have just a general theme that connects to like, the next guest on the podcast? What's your gut tell you? Because
my gut says don't play it all the same. Don't do everything identical, because they're all different monsters. They're all different little audiences, all different monsters in their own little way. So like for me, a mature audience is on Facebook, and so I know that content with my wife and I goes well on Facebook according to the numbers that I have to the pool, like my followers, right? I know that if I place a video of me and my dog, we're going to get way more likes than just me, because it's family orientated. There's a fur baby there. You know what I'm saying? Like there's way more. And on Facebook, there's a mature audience that resonates with, right? On TikTok, maybe it does resonate on TikTok. I'm not messing with TikTok yet, because I know once I get in it, I'm going to dive hard into it. I know that if I got on it, I would be a monster on it. Okay, that's all I know. I don't want to. I know that it'll just suck my life out of me. All right. So I've been trying to hold it off. And I'm not yet successful at any social media platform yet, but I'm starting to see the patterns. I'm starting to connect the dots, and so I feel like I've been able to see results in like my content as far as like how many hashtags pick it up. Like I posted some doing these new video formats for certain channels, and I'm testing out like what it looks like on the platform. If I play it in this wide angle, if I show it to them, what does it look like? What does it feel like? How does it respond? Or if I did it long ways, I'll even just even changing the shape of your angle, right? But testing it where the content may be, it might be the same clip, but just changed the shape. And then I would put like everything the same in it to see how those would react. And I determined that on Instagram, a square is the best format for my content for the podcast. After a while, I started I executed only a square grid pattern, so that when people went to my profile, they would see it was just a square grid pattern. It looked like somebody had invested a lot of time in curating that content, which I did. But that doesn't really help the thing overall. But I think more for what you're saying overall, those like, just try to determine there's a little bit younger audience on Instagram, a more artistic audience on Instagram. Then there's even younger audience on TikTok, and a less mature audience on TikTok. So you don't want to try and sell like car insurance on TikTok. Yeah.
No, I think you just went like the microscope view, like you were just zooming in on basically the retention of your viewership. You started there, and then you went back out to talking about like the different demographics, different people like on Facebook versus Twitter, and who's interested in you there. And that's kind of the way I've been thinking about it too, is like, okay, so you have a group of people on Facebook that you can characterize, right? You know the types of things that they like. You just know that, right? But it's like, once you know that, then you're going into the details of, okay, well, what kind of image, like Instagram would be a better example, what kind of image just gets more average views, like consistently? Okay, I see this. Okay, I see. And I think like the impressions that you're getting, if you can prove that in the fine details, that posting this style of picture versus this kind, even down to like the what do you call them, like the Instagram filters, if you can prove that, then you have like, you're making it science, you're doing science, like you're getting it down to a method of, I know my target demographic, so I kind of just know what to say creatively. And then you drill down into each of those groups and say like, okay, well, for this group, like on Facebook, this type of post has been successful more times than not, and I'm always going to do this. It's like fine tuning to get perfection. Exactly. So that you can just follow the method. Yeah. Okay.
Totally. Everything's testing, looking at what's happening, and then trying to tune accordingly to try and to rise or to overcome whatever that hump is. And a lot of time it's authenticity. So like right now, like me just being on here, us chatting about this, and if I get this on the podcast and I dump it on the podcast, this is so authentic because I'm literally telling them I'm telling them how I make the sausage. You know what I'm saying? Like we're talking about how we're making the sausage, and there's going to be people who will buy into how we're making the sausage, and there's people who are like, we're crazy, right? So, I mean, and I think the proof is in the pudding. So if we continue to execute like our strategy, our thoughts, and like try to fine tune what we're looking at, I mean, it's the scientific method can be exploited at any level of profession, right? And I think it's time that the average fellow learn how to use scientific method. And so if you look at Instagram is a perfect example of how we can execute the scientific method. Let's, track and repeat the thing. And then after that, we will change it to manipulate it, right? We'll look at the manipulation. And so that's all I'm looking at right now. And I try and test that on 4 different Instagram accounts. They're all me, and they're all me trying something on it. But I will dedicate, I think I might take the Web Solutions account, and I will dedicate it to doing maybe black posts. And what this is, I'll explain this to you right now, so that way maybe you can give me some feedback on how we should maybe control this experiment. So we should do white and black posts, just white and black, those two, just a black square and a white square. And then we should put the same hashtags on both of them, and we should just post those and see what happens, right? And then the only thing we're going to do is change the hashtags, and then we'll look at the overall performance of white, black square, and hashtags, and we can just track those or whatever. And that might be an experiment. I mean, we might not measure them against each other, but we might measure the hashtags. We'll look at the hashtags that we use in every post, and the content will be consistent because it's just a black square, it's just a white square. Then but also there's other influences too. Like what happens when somebody looks at your post and they go to your page and they see that I have way more content there that's just not white and black square. That might even fudge up the data, fudge up what we're looking for too. You know what I'm saying? There's no control, because if they go one step deeper to my page, or they see Web Solutions and more, that might already put them in a frame of mind of like, it could, I don't know. I believe that those factor in, because it's not controlled, right? It's not a controlled.
But it is though. Like that's like exactly. I mean that's exactly what. I think again, that's a detail, and I think the important thing to remember is, as long as you start on like with the big umbrella, like as long as like if that's the A/B test you're going to do, comparing like the white to black square, then I would take a step back and be like, okay, like if this is all about getting them to my main page, then let's try to match the scheme. Let's try to match the theme to this change that we're doing. And then, go down to the A/B tests, like which one is getting, more viewership, more impressions on people. But I would say don't worry so much about like the being so rigid and just so scientific about it, because the way I see it is like, you could A/B test yourself with like, okay, I'm going to every day just have the Twitter top trending, right now pulled up before I tweet, right? And then you could just like look at the list of words, and you might not have anything that relates to what you're talking about, right? But you could just like mark a 0 each day that happens, and then one day you could see, oh, hey, look, like coffee's trending, like, oh, like sick. Then you post about coffee that day, and if you notice a change in viewership, well, you have those ticks. You have this many days, and then okay, there's a word that's related, there's a 1, and then you have all these zeros. And then my idea is that I think if you were to look at that later, you would see increased viewership on that post. And if you find that pattern, then you can start like spreading out from there. Like not just coffee, let's try tea,
I think you're 100% correct, because that's like riding a wave in traffic. You know what I'm saying? Because there is a traffic jam on a hashtag, right? When there's a trending hashtag, there's a traffic jam on that. Everybody's just we flock to it. Everybody's like, oh my god, I found one. And like, so I was talking with my boy Daniel, and he's trying to launch this comic book, and one of the things he mentioned was like, what do you guys want to see in his post? And I said, I want to see how the sausage is made, kind of like post, was what I told him. And he started posting more consistently, like how the art is developed of their comic book, right? And I don't think that had anything to do with like how the success of like finding a hashtag, but he started to like notice the hashtags, right? So I think the consistency, like you mentioned, like sort of the consistency in the content, and then after that, like rotating the hashtags. So if your content is consistent overall, you rotate the hashtags. Then you can determine like, oh man, these are my market niche groups. And then if you find you determine your niche hashtags that are successful for you, and those pop up trending, like you said, right? If you have 2 or 3 of your niche hashtags that are obviously that match with your content, and you know your content and your hashtags are solid, and those hashtags are trending, and you have 3 or 4 of those that are trending that day, maybe you have coffee, podcast, and web solutions are trending in one day, and I happen to fit the bill, and I have content that people would eat up if they seen it because it's spot on for that. Right. That's the traffic. That's that wave that picks it up in the algorithm where you're like, oh my God, that's so I think that's, in theory, I think that's what's happening, because you kind of made that, like you kind of like open that up, and I'm saying like I always try and like I've tried to execute, but I've never been able to quite like lay it down or have a complete thought painted the way we're doing right now, right?
Yeah, no, I hear you. I think again, it just comes down, like I keep a notepad with me like all the time, right? And it's like if there's something that quick that I think about, and I'm like, okay, like what's the average let's just like retweet post for this date range, okay? That might be something that I don't feel like is really important or relevant to like building viewership and getting followers. And so I'll just like mark it. Like, okay, I looked at it, I'll write it down. And you can literally just go down to the I looked. And I guess that's my whole point, is like the changes that you do implement, you can track as easily as, I did this or I didn't do this. But every time you go back to do, to look at that number again, that is when you have to record it, right? But it becomes as simple as that, because if you have the dates, you look back and you're like, okay, why was I successful on these days? Like what made these posts different? And then you get your finding. And so I think what you're saying about like spreading out from there, like one of the things you could do is look at like like related words, like related to the trending word. There's I use like there's like a function you can do where you can actually pull up like all the posts that have been posted with that word, and then like the attached hashtags, right?
Okay.
And so then you can kind of like look at that descending by retweets or favorites, and then you get like combinations of words where maybe your word didn't fit in coffee to like, or maybe your word doesn't fit in tea, right? Because you're posting about coffee, but maybe like, I don't know, caffeine, right? Caffeine might be a word that's been posted like a lot. And so then you might find out that like, okay, these words that relate to the top trending words today, right now, are these. And I wonder what happens if I post like a related hashtag. And then you might find something different. You might find it's just as effective, or you might find nothing.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think it just comes down to consistency with your decision making. And especially when you're looking at like, view counts, likes, reposts, that's when it really matters, just to keep track of the dates and mark down the days that were highly successful, and then just like go back like a detective and try to figure out why, what led them down the path to your house.
Exactly. And I think you're 100% correct about that. Like even at just writing down the date on a post, and then you go back and you look at that, like literally people just don't do that, so they just don't know what the difference is, right? And you can look at it. Like I've literally looked at posts from 8 years ago, and I'm like, wow, man, I have no idea how to post anything on the internet 10 years ago, and now I'm looking at it where I'm just like, man, I'm all like self-conscious about how I take a picture and everything. It's a little weird. It's a little weird, but it's just, I think you just looking at putting that Facebook time warp thing where they show you like a memory, dude, that in itself should open people's eyes to like what's happening on the
That's why I deleted. That's why I deleted my Facebook, because I'm with you. It's always like a cringe fest for me on Facebook now if I were to put it back on. But that is interesting too, because we're getting into like A/B testing your image. Like, what is your literal image on the internet? How does that garner viewership? And it's like, dang, I guess you have to do that now.
The game is deep. The
The
game
game
is deep.
runs deep.
And I can prove it to you too, because like if you go look at YouTubers, right, before they blow up, right before they blow up, usually they have like a, just a simple like everyday average haircut, right, and their face is pretty much just they're an average face, right, like myself. But as soon as they blow up, as soon as they get, they get sponsors, or they get a team of 3 people to help produce their content, or even they discover that they're being watched and they're blowing up, right? It changes instantly. The haircuts are on point every single time. Like their hair is perfect every single time, right? Because they're starting to they've determined that their face and how they look on camera, the more professional, appropriate it looks, the greater the user retention, right? The softer it is to watch the content. So overall, you'll see some pretty gnarly nerds that just look like they live in sweats, right? And all of a sudden, like 5 years later, they're just like this handsome dude who's just like, using, nice hair stuff, and like you're like, whoa, his teeth are straight, whoa. Because they're starting, there's not that they're self-conscious about it, but it is a part of their, like, part of the deal. Like if you want to, you want to like be successful at something, you might try a strategy, and I think that's one of it, is making yourself, camera appropriate, or like Starlight, I guess, something.
No, that makes sense. I mean, kind of in line with that too. I guess, how does that? My question, I guess, there is like, how does that limit your creativity, or does it not? Like, having to double check everything. I mean, because I'm extremely OCD. Like, I will look at my work like 19,000 times. Like, and I'll do everything by hand if I have to, just to make sure that I'm being consistent. But there's a point that for me, and that becomes like so not only monotonous, but just it becomes a killer, like, to my productivity. So I guess I'm asking is like maybe more about the how does that even affect your creativity in posting, or does that even affect like do you have any advice, I guess, on how to stay creative with your content and not letting that concern, like,
I totally get it, because like I was telling my friend about this. I was like, man, like, now that I know that, here's the simple, this will show the world what Facebook and Instagram like will do for you, if you learn how to use it, right? So like me with my hair up, I have long hair, it's 100 views. When I take my hair out and I shake it, boom, 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 300 views. Okay, the content could be anything. It could be anything. It could be me walking my dog.
but the first 5 seconds.
And just boom, boom, boom. It's the different. I've seen the difference, and I know that I can prove that, like, repeatedly. I can prove that. When I put my hair up, like 100 views. Put the hair down, 300 views. It's noticeable. So it does play into your creativity, and you can use it as a strategy for good. Like, I want this story to go out further. So what I did is I walked my dog. I took my hair out on a sunny day, and I got some really clean, like, nice sunny footage. And I told my brother, I said, hey man, you got a new job. Congratulations, bro. Shout out to you. Love what you're doing. You know what I'm saying? So I know I'm going to get some attention real quick, and I'm going to hit him with a joke to get them to laugh. Because I want people, when people are watching it, this is what I feel. I feel like I want to give them a little nugget of like, oh, that was a fun thing to watch, right? It was just like a little, because I don't know, like, there's no reason for them to watch it. It's just, it's social media. You just want to toss it out there into the world. But when you see that people are watching, that they react differently to certain things, you start to be creative in those parameters to try and either adapt it for your own purpose. Some people do it for evil, or some people like me want to build a platform like the Average Fellows podcast, or even just start my own business. I feel that those two are noble causes. So those drive me to be successful on the platforms now.
That's interesting. So you're like, there's a flexibility with like A/B testing, just everything. I mean, we talked about your image, but down to like the movements you do on camera. If you notice, like, you're like, why on these days, like, why these posts did they blow up? And like, you probably take a look, and it's like all 3 days. You shake your hair out, and it's like, whoa, like that actually, like, you have to be creative but also flexible enough, which clearly you are, to see that had an impact. And I think that's that's honestly hilarious, but I think that's
Yeah.
exactly what you'd have to do. I don't know, but it is interesting, like, that if you can catch those differences, that, like, if once you can be certain, then it's proved, you can keep showing it over and over. And I really like that.
I feel like I definitely feel like I'm mastering content, building content, and just laying it down and laying it down thick, like on YouTube. Like I can look at some YouTubers and I'm like closing in on recreating some of their content and designing content like an unboxing video specifically to engage the audience, change the angles more than once, put some nice catchy lo-fi music in the background so that way they come back to the video saying, oh man, I love the music. Because most unboxing videos have dumb music. Some people just have like, honky tonk music in the background. You're like, what the heck?
What is this?
Yeah. So like for me, it was like I'm literally starting to like design the content so that way it goes further throughout the internet. It becomes more valuable. Like somebody watches it because it's pleasurable, like to the eye and to the ears. That's literally, and okay, I said this to my buddy. I was like, this is a terrible analogy, but on the internet, you have to show candy. You have to give candy to the users. Okay. And my analogy by that is because you can only like entice them with something that would make their lips wet or something, right? And so like that's the internet in the very darkness of it, right? So when I'm doing unboxing videos now, this was my thought. I need to capture the product better because that's the candy. They want to see the product better, right? So me upping the quality of my video cameras, me upping the quality of the content overall, like how I capture it, the audio, the video, the lighting, eliminating anything that might be distracting to the viewer, like that is all now value. And so they're going to come back because they said they disseminated the information to me in a way that I could receive it because it like catered to how I receive information, right? So that's me, and right now that's the stuff that I'm about right now. Hey man, it was good chatting with you, but like for sure we can continue this. I can post this as like a part A or something, or like a one of whatevers, or an intro to like a whatever, an ongoing conversation about web traffic.
Yeah, dude, that would be awesome. Like I'm definitely down. I'll probably prepare a little beforehand next time. So if you want to do like maybe not next week, like but the week after, that would work for me.
Yeah, man.
At the same time.
Hey, so that does it, man. That does it for this week's episode of the Average Fellas Podcast. Hey, Mark, thanks for jumping on the call with us and just giving us some great insight. So, hey, you guys out there listening, thank you for liking, subscribing, rating, reviewing. Hit that follow button, whatever it may be, man. And once again, look out for the fellas on all the social media platforms. That's Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, YouTube, right? www.averagefellas.com for your specialty craft roast coffee, 4-ounce bag. That's right, with notes of honey, fig, and tobacco. Hey guys, check out the fellas, web solutions and more. That's what I'm talking about. Laters.